Hi everybody, it's Jenny from the Missouri Star Quilt Company, and I've got a really fun and interesting project for you today. Let's take a look at this quilt. Isn't this great? I love how the stars pop off. I love this little outer border, and I can hardly wait to show you how to do it. So to make this quilt, what you're going to need is one packet of 10-inch squares, and we have used a little bit of Sparkle by Zoe Pern for Riley Blake. You're going to need some accent fabric, half a yard of white, and that's this right here. You're going to need a 1 3/4 yards of the background, and that's this black is what we're calling the background. And it also takes in this first little border out here. And then this outer border out here is a nice big 6-inch border, and you're going to need a 1 1/4 yards for that. On the back, we're using 4 3/4 yards, and we've used this nice big floral print. And so it's just a great quilt. It makes a quilt that is 67 by 75, and that's 1 layer cake. So remember, if you want these to be bigger, you just add another layer cake to that, and it will double the size. So let me show you how to do this, because this is really, really fun. And I love it when things, when I'm playing with an idea, and when things come together like this, I just love it. That's my favorite part of quilting. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our layer cake and we're going to cut it in a diagram like this. Now you'll have a real diagram in your pattern, your paper. You'll have a real diagram. This was my cutting diagram that I used, but it makes sense to look at it because that's how we're going to cut every single layer cake square. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this layer cake and we're going to cut it. And our first cut is going to be 4 inches. So what we're dealing with right here is the little pinks. You want to watch those. So when you're cutting, the accuracy of the cutting on this is pretty important. So if you lay your square on a mat, look at where the pinked edges come. These come just a little bit over the edge. And so what we're going to do is we're going to measure our 4 inches from just barely on the inside of that edge, or else just use your mat for that. So I'm going to make a 4-inch cut. The second cut is going to be a little 3-inch cut. And here we go with that. And we want to just measure this one to make sure that it is also exactly 3. And it is, and you can see here we have those little pinked edges just peeking out from behind there, and that's totally okay. All right, so then we're going to turn these. And I'm going to make my first cut here again. We're going to do 4 3 3. So here's my 4-inch cut right here. And then we're going to do a 3 right here. Let me move these out to make sure that I'm right on the line. And I am. We're going to go ahead and cut this. All right. So what you should have when you're done with this cutting is you should have 4 of these that are 3 by 4. And 4 of these that are 3 by 3, and 1 4-inch square for the corner. So these here are where our star legs are going to become. Now this is really interesting. I'm going to use black squares, and I love these. I don't know if you guys have seen these or used these, but we get these little tiny packs, and there are 84 squares in a pack, and I love that they're pre-cut, and they come in black and white and beige and all different colors, and I use them. I gave you yardage amounts. Remember, when you're calculating your yardage, you're getting 16 squares per strip, and I tell you this because when we look at the quilt, you'll see most of our stars are black with black legs, but there's a few black ones, and the black didn't show up. And when we were designing this, it happened just the opposite. I was going to make all the legs, I was going to make them white. But look how these look. They just kind of washed out. And so for me, it was a design choice to actually say, no, this one doesn't work so well, but look how well this works. But obviously it wouldn't show up on the black. So we decided to, on purpose, take our black ones and put white legs around it. Now, when you buy a pack, if you may or may not use this pack, so you just want to take that into account. If you have one that all the whites, they all look good with a white background or with a whatever color background you choose, that's great. But if you have some that don't look so good, don't be afraid to swap those out because it's a really cool look. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to take our 4, and these are 3 by 4 inches, and we are going to take some black corners, and we're going to put those on both corners. So let me just show you. I guess I should show you first, shouldn't I? So what we're going to do is we're going to take this one right here, and we're going to sew straight across this, corner to corner. So you can draw a line, or you can press the line, whatever you want to do. Give yourself a sew line. You could use this tape like I use where it shows. And then what we're going to do is we are going to sew across there, and we're going to do this to all 4 of ours on the same side. So we're going to chain piece these along. And I have white thread on here, and normally I would use black thread, but I'm just going to go ahead and use the white so it's easier for you to see. And I'm going to sew across here, and then I'm just going to feed the next one in. And I'm going to feed all of these in here. And I'm just going to try not to lick my fingers too, because I know that is a problem right now. We're not supposed to be doing that. All right, here we go. Now, I've done this for a long time, so I've got a pretty good eye corner to corner. And so, but if you don't feel comfortable with that, don't hesitate to, you can use a little chalk pencil, or you can use the iron and iron you a little crease. All right, now what we're going to do is we're going to cut these off. We're actually going to feed these back through. And this little border out here, all this little border, this comes from this tiny little piece that we're going to cut off. Now I want you to look at this, because what I'm going to do is against all the rules. So if you know the rules, it's against all the rules. So I'm going to sew another line, but it's not going to quite be a 1/2 inch. It's going to be smaller. It's just going to be smaller because I wanted to use that little square. Actually, I attended a retreat recently, and a lady had a baggie, and she saved all the little pieces that she cut off so that she could square them into little tiny 1/2 square triangles. And so I thought, maybe I'll try that. Maybe I'll see if I can fill a baggie and do that, you know. And so I was originally going to do that. And when I saw how many of these I got, I decided to see if I could do a little border. And I think this little border adds so much to this quilt. So let me just show you how I sewed them. So I'm just going to go along here like this. And I just left like, I don't know, maybe 1/8 of an inch from the line and sewed across it. So it probably comes out to about less than 1/2. I'm just eyeballing this, but if you're a perfectionist and you want to make sure these are just right, let me show you how to do that. Because the little squares I used ended up being 2 inches. So if you'll take your ruler and you will measure over 2 inches, you can make a mark here, and then you know your line has to be exactly that far. I'm just eyeballing it, and it worked for me, but you do whatever you feel comfortable with. So I'm going to go ahead and sew these down like this. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to cut them apart. Now you can see I don't have a 1/2 inch. I'm not getting 1/4 of an inch on either side of this thing. But, you know, I'm just living dangerously. My stitch is a little bit smaller, and it's okay with me. You know, it's all right that it's not exactly 1/4 of an inch. It's okay. So we got enough to hold it together, and somebody's going to quilt this, and it's going to be like a million stitches on top of it. So now I'm going to press these back, and we're going to do exactly the same thing to the other side. And this is going to make all of our star legs. All right, and one more. All right, so now we're going to do the same thing to the other side. We're going to get 4 squares, and let me count those out. And then we're going to put these on the other side and do the same thing. So I'm just going to line them up on the corner. This is a great way to keep your block square, is line it up along the edge and sew across. And I'm just going to feed them in here one after another after another. And then I'm just going to cut in between them. So we're going to do the same thing, and then just by doing that, our 4 legs are finished. And I am going to trim these apart and iron them back. And you can see, you know, it's not too terribly dangerous, but for people who are rule followers, this is going to be a tough thing. And honestly, or maybe if you're a beginner and you don't want to mess with this part, you don't have to put that. You can actually throw this triangle in the trash. You do not have to keep that and put that little border on. So if this part of it makes you a little nervous, just leave it out. It's a whole new pattern. It's a whole new something, something. All right, here we go. I'm going to press these back like this, and I'm going to show you how to make this star. We're just going to make sure those lay down nice and flat. We're going to set these aside for now, and we're going to lay our star out. So our 4-inch square goes right in the middle, and the legs all butt up next to that right here. Just like that. And then these little 3-inch blocks go on all the corners. So right here. So the way I like to sew these together is I like to sew this row on top of here like this, and I just sew one row all the way down, and then I'm going to add the other piece to the other side. So I'm going to make sure this matches up. And I'm just going to sew right down the side of these. And because they overlap, it gives you a lot of room. You're going to have to work hard to lose that star point is what I'm trying to say. It's just a great little star for these kind of things. I like these little floating stars a lot. All right, now we're going to add our other pieces, and I'm going to flip this over so I can add them on the other side and go from the bottom to the top. And my pieces will actually be attached with a thread in between. So then I'll just be able to sew these rows together. And it's almost like you've cheated because you don't have to pin because they're already together. Actually, we're not cheating. We're just beating the system. That's what we're doing. We're winning the game. All right, now I'm just going to fold these over and sew them onto the middle section. And when I sew these, you want to make sure that your blocks nest up. And so you want to put one seam one way, one seam the other, and make sure that they nest up and they're nice and tight. You don't feel any fabric in between or any openings in between. And we're going to do this to the top row over here. See, half our star is done right there. Again, I'm just going to nest those seams, make sure they line up real nice, line up the center section. I like to line up as I go along. All right. And just like that, you have this cute little star. So let's press that. Get that nice, laying out there nice and straight. All right. Now you can see if I had put the white legs on this, it would just kind of disappear. It would look so dull. So the black really makes that pop. So make sure you look at your accent fabric. Now we laid this whole middle out. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rows. So 42 10-inch squares is what we used. And we got all of this from the 10-inch square just by the way we cut, which I love that. Now we have these little triangles, and let me show you how to make that, that little border. So they're pretty tiny, and the first triangle you cut off is going to be a pure triangle. Let me just press this so you can look at it. And by you'll see what I mean by pure. That wasn't actually probably the right word. But you'll see. So the first side of the triangle looks like this, and it's just a straight little 2-inch triangle. You'll want to square these up and make sure that they're 2 inches. Mine are pretty dang close. But the second side, you're going to have a little piece of the other star leg on there. So that's what I meant by not pure. That probably was way the wrong word. It's got a little piece right there of the other triangle, but you pretty much lose that in the seam, you know. So when you put these together, and I matched my colors together like this and put them together, but when you sew that into the seam, you pretty much lose that. Now you get 8 of these little things from every star block. So you get twice as many as you need to border. So I still have this huge baggie of half square triangles that I took off. Now the fun thing about this to remember is that half square triangles, there's a zillion things you can do with these. And I'm just going to save the rest of mine in the baggie. So what I did with mine was I took and sewed them together. I sewed my colors together like this and just made a long chain. See how that is? And then I put all my stars together, put an 1.5 inch border out here. So a little tiny 1.5 inch border. I just wanted something to separate that so that these little points would stand out. And then I added the outer border, which happens to be black. And the black on here just kind of blends with that. If this wasn't black, I would have put another 1.5 inch border out here just to finish off that look. But because this border is black, it finishes it off for us. So I just think it's a great look. I think it's a lot of fun. It's totally no waste because we're even using these tiny little babies for the border. But remember, if this is something, if the little tiny ones, if that scares you a little bit, work into it slowly. Just work into it slowly. Try a few, see if it works for you. If it doesn't, this is a great quilt in and of itself, just with these great, easy little stars. And you can make the whole thing out of 1-layer cake. And because we used fabric to make them pop, we're calling it Pop Stars. So we hope you enjoyed this tutorial from the Missouri Star Quilt Company on the Pop Stars quilt.